What's up YouTube, Brochosaurus back with another React video. Today we're taking a look at Starfield DLC is going to be massive. Now I know we already talked about getting 10 years worth of content in DLC and online support for this game for the future. I wasn't aware of any DLC coming out anytime soon. Let's go ahead and take a look at that now and see what's going on. Let's go!
Now, some of the most interesting information we've gotten out of Todd Howard when talking about Starfield has been how much more Bethesda is planning on supporting Starfield compared to Bethesda's previous titles. And that in a combination with Todd Howard also mentioning that they developed Starfield as a game to have a much longer life within the game itself. So having a lot more content to do once you reach what's essentially the end game and allowing you to continue through a single playthrough for a lot longer period of time. So I thought it would be interesting to go over some of this information, to go over how much DLC previous Bethesda games got, and go over how big of a deal this could actually be for Starfield. And the best place to start is probably to mention that Starfield already has an announced story DLC called Shattered Space, which you'll also get access to if you buy any of the higher tier versions of the game. This is already showing that they have pretty big plans for the future content to be released.
Oh, so that was the DLC content. It was the Shattered Space thing. Yeah, you get that with the premium edition. So we're not going to get the DLC on Game Pass probably. I don't know.
Into Starfield. And I think it's also showing that they want to support this game for a longer period of time than they've supported their other games. And Todd Howard even mentioned some of the things we'll be seeing, specifically mentioning story DLC, such as Shattered Space, new features, and even a bigger expansion style DLC. So basically everything we've experienced from previous Bethesda titles, but all in one game and a lot more of it. And after hearing this, I was curious on how much DLC previous Bethesda titles actually received. So I want to go over the DLC of Oblivion, Skyrim, and Fallout 4. Now for Oblivion, it actually got quite a bit more DLC compared to Skyrim or Fallout 4. And I think this is just because they were kind of throwing a bunch of ideas and seeing what stuck. A bunch of these DLCs are just adding in like some new items to go get. Some are just adding in some new spells. So there's quite a bit more smaller DLC. And I think they were also kind of testing what could actually be sellable content.
I mean, that doesn't sound extremely exciting. Putting a couple things to go get here and there. I mean, can we go a little bit deeper here on the DLC information? Because this doesn't sound interesting to me whatsoever.
Specifically because this was a flagship title for the Xbox 360. I even remember buying the currency on the Xbox 360 called Microsoft Points to buy these DLCs. And I'm sure Xbox also played a role in getting more DLC for Oblivion. But there was the Fighter's Stronghold, the Horse Armor Pack, which was some of the first cosmetic DLC in any AAA game. There was Knights of the Nine, there was Mehrunes Razor, there was Orrery, there was Spell Tomes, there was the Thieves' Den, there was the Vile Lair, there was the Wizard's Tower, and then there was what I consider to be one of the best DLCs in the entirety of gaming, which is the Elder Scrolls Shivering Isles. And this was basically an expansion level DLC. The closest thing I think of when thinking about this DLC is an expansion to, say, an MMO. So something more along the lines of a World of Warcraft expansion than a normal DLC from a Bethesda game. And Shivering Isles was just a masterpiece of DLC.
Trying to think how that would work. A World of Warcraft expansion versus a Bethesda DLC. So it's just like very small short quests and maybe some cosmetics. That's the best way I can think of it.
If you've never played Oblivion, I would legitimately recommend it just for the Shivering Isles DLC. That's how good I think that content actually was. But then going over to Skyrim, we have surprisingly little. We have 2 free DLCs with a high resolution texture pack and a Fall of the Space Core, which was basically just adding in a Portal 2 mod officially to Skyrim to celebrate the Steam Workshop workshop opening for Skyrim, but their main DLCs were Dawnguard, Hearthfire, and Dragonborn. So only 3 main DLCs. Now these were pretty big additions to the game, so they were a lot bigger than majority of Oblivion's content, but this is only 3 DLCs in probably the longest winded first player game ever released. Skyrim still has ridiculous amounts of players playing it to this day, so it's very surprising they
Skyrim's an amazing game, to be fair.
Didn't release more DLC, and this is actually one of the reasons why I think they're going to be supporting Starfield even more, because it seemed like Skyrim taught them a lot about their games, with how long people will continue to play your games later down the road, and how much people are willing to actually buy new content additions, because Skyrim has been re-released like 10 different times without adding in any substantial new content.
Unfortunately.
Sometimes they add in some new content, but people still buy all the newest versions. So I think they're going to Starfield with the mindset that if we just keep making new content, a lot of people will just buy all of it. So might as well just keep adding stuff into the game. And
yeah, I mean, and that works for a lot of games, honestly, especially open world. And I mean, they've already confirmed anyways that we're going to be getting 10 plus years of live service updates and DLC content added to this game. So yeah, I mean, we can expect this to be true. Absolutely.
And then we have Fallout 4, where we got Automatron, and then Wasteland Workshop, Far Harbor, which is also considered one of the top DLCs ever released in gaming, and probably the best Fallout DLC ever released. We have the Contraptions Workshop, we have the Vault Tech Workshop, we have Nuka World, then we also have a high resolution texture pack. And I think one of the biggest takeaways when looking at their previous titles is that they have learned from these previous titles that they can continue to make content for their games, and that content will continue to be bought in large quantities, and people will just continue to play these single player games for years and years down the road, just with some new DLC added. And I think this also ties into mods, because if they add, say, a whole new feature or system into Starfield after it's released, that new system can now be used by modders and just give them a plethora of new ideas and content to make off of that new system, which will then just keep players playing the game longer, allowing them to continue to make more content for Starfield. And because there's been so many mods being made, a lot more players are still playing, so a lot more players will be continuing to buy the new DLCs that keep being released. And I think one of the most obvious pieces of this is that it's probably just going to be much easier to create new ideas, new content, and new systems for Starfield, just because of how much more expansive a sci-fi space game can be than a post-apocalyptic game or a fantasy game, because you just have the potential to do so much more.
Yeah, I mean, because for one, we already know that space is like limitless and it's ever expanding. Number two, space is still one of the most, if not like our oceans, the highly unknown locations in the universe. So there's so much potential to keep just adding and adding and adding all these new ideas and stuff into the game, because there's so much mystery behind what could be for like a space genre game.
DLC could be completely focused around one single planet, where there could be a massive unfolding story on just that one planet. One DLC could be a complete overhaul or new additions to the spaceship system, adding in new combat, new ships to fight, new upgrades. One system could be a massive addition to outposts, allowing you to build much more, even having something like allowing you to use the outpost system in space to build your own space stations, which is a little bit more outlandish but would be really cool. And then depending on how much actual space magic is in the game, like we've been teased at, they could even add additions to that, or further expand on searching for alien life and these more alien powers. There's just so much more possibilities with a sci-fi game expansive as Starfield that I think it'll just be much easier for the developers at Bethesda to make new DLC. And to even add in on top of that, they've done a lot of work on the procedural generation and different systems they have running in Starfield, so this will most likely make DLC easier to produce, because if they want to create, say, a handful of new planets, they would just create these tiles that would wrap around these new worlds, generally making it easier to make a lot more land or planets without having to handcraft absolutely everything. And I would probably expect DLCs to generally be larger than DLCs of their previous games, just because it's probably going to be easier to make it. And even though Starfield is going to be such a ridiculously expansive game with with potentially thousands of hours of content to be able to see everything, I think it's so very exciting to think of the possibilities of what they could add in future DLC. But that's all I want to go over, so thanks for watching.
So it looks like the DLC that's already been announced with the game coming out on day one or pre-release, I don't know if they're having a pre-release or what, where you can get early access to the game. Looks like that DLC will just be short-formed content and maybe some cosmetics. So the longer like story missions and things like that, those kind of DLC content, that'll probably be coming later on down the road. Obviously, as expected, again, we have 10 years of DLC and live service support, so we can expect that later on, obviously. But for now, it looks like this DLC is just that. Anyways, guys, that's the video for today. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this content, make sure to leave a like, hit the sub if you're new to the channel, and as always, I'll see you guys on the next one. Hey guys, if you like the video, make sure you head over to the page, hit that like button, scroll over, smash that subscribe, and hit that bell icon to get notified for future video drops, and I will see you guys on the next one. Thanks for watching.